Welcome, welcome everyone here at the downtown venue and everyone joining us virtually. I'm Lauren Ballard and I'm a director here at H2O, and I was just going to give you a couple updates for the week. First of all, if you have not filled out a connection card, you can do that online or on the app, and that'll help you get plugged in to receive more updates and get plugged into our groups. And I'm really excited to share an update for next Sunday. We are going to be having a socially distanced outdoor service at 10:30 a.m. at Carter Park near the softball fields. So bring a blanket or chairs, bring all the kids. This will definitely have a different feel, but we're really excited for this COVID-friendly opportunity. And if you aren't able to make it, we will still be having a virtual service at that time. And for all the regular attenders, I just wanted to remind you that you can give online or on our app. But thank you so much for being with us. So go ahead and stand and join us in worship.
Love will never fail, you're steadfast. The promises are true, you're faithful. Cover all my sins with forgiveness. Eyes have seen your ways, your goodness, love and faithfulness. We behold your glory, righteousness and peace kiss heavens all around us. Spring up, oh well, living water rise within us. Spring up, oh well, Holy Spirit deep within us. Rise, 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 rise. Love will never fail, you're steadfast. Promises are true, you're faithful. Cover all my sins with forgiveness. Eyes have seen your ways, your goodness, love and faithfulness. We behold your glory, righteousness and peace kiss heavens all around us. Spring up, oh well, living water rise within us. Spring up, oh well, Holy Spirit deep within us. Spring up, oh well, living water rise within us. Spring up, oh well, Holy Spirit deep within us. Rise, 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 rise. See your goodness in the land of the living. See your goodness in the land of the living. See your goodness in the land of the living. See your goodness in the land of the living. Spring up, oh well. Spring up, oh well, living water rise within us. Spring
Amen. We just want to say welcome, everyone. Just real glad to be together this morning. We were just kind of chatting a little bit a second ago as a worship team, just talking about it's really the weirdness of the times that we're in right now. That there's a lot of heaviness. There's a lot of there's just a lot that captures our attention and affects our mood as a team and as friends, and just feels like what we need is just this posture of worship, right? That in the midst of whatever is going on, whatever is capturing our attention and thoughts, that we need to sort of lift our eyes above it all and remember that we worship and we serve a God that's beyond all that, right? That He's the beginning, that He's the end. The Bible describes Him as the Alpha, as the Omega. And so we're just going to take a minute and remember that. This is a new song that we wrote, and we just want to sing it and lift our eyes to Him together.
Gathering for the one who is and always For he is Alpha, Omega, beginning and the end. And I will praise you forever and ever. Amen. Pray with me. God, we thank you that you are the Alpha and the Omega, that you're above everything that's going on in this world, God. We thank you for your love and for your grace, God. We thank you that you hold our beginning and our end in your hands. We pray that you'll continue to keep us, God, and help us to remember you're all powerful, all knowing, and all loving. So it's in your name we pray. Ask all these things. Amen. You guys take a seat.
All right. Well, good morning again. It's great to have you here with us. My name's Brian Wiles. I'm one of the pastors. And you did hear that right. Kent slipped it in. That was an original song that our band wrote. I thought that was awesome. And excuse me, I feel, just so blessed to be led in worship every week by such a talented group of people that use their gifts for the Lord. So thank you guys for leading us in that. Welcome. If you're joining us online, it's great to have those of you who are here with us. And we are in the middle of the series that we're calling Be the Church. And we've talked about this throughout this summer, that we're in a unique season and time as a world right now. And that means that the church is in a unique season of time, because the church is supposed to be in the world, but not of the world. And so we're talking about this reality that church isn't just something that we go to, although that is part of church, but church is something that we actually are. That when God adopts us into his family, when we become followers of Christ, we aren't just called to go and gather together, but we are called to be the family of God. And so what we've been doing throughout this summer is we've been looking at these one another commands that Jesus and the New Testament authors have given us that basically tell us how to live out being the church. They help us to understand what it looks like to live out the command that church isn't just something you go to, but church is something that you are. So we've been looking at all of these different one another commands, because you have to have relationships with one another to actually be the church. And so we've talked about these different one another's, and today we're coming to a one another command where we are told in the book of 1 Peter to be hospitable to one another. We're going to look at this idea of hospitality and how when we're hospitable to one another, we are engaging in this command to love one another in the way that Jesus asks us to. I know my wife and I, we don't watch a ton of TV, but one of the shows and one of the stations that we watch oftentimes is HGTV. And some of us are pretty familiar with that. Some of us, we love watching different shows on that channel. And we get wrapped into these shows that typically have to do with homes. My wife, she likes decorating. She's got great taste. I like, looking at houses and understanding what goes on and looking at the market. That's one of my hobbies. And so we get into these shows like Fixer Upper or Love It or List It. And what they basically do, if you've never seen those shows, is they walk different couples through houses and they kind of pick out the things that they like about the houses. Sometimes they'll completely transform the houses, but you get to watch the mindset of the people as they're making decisions about what they like and what they don't like. Well, there's this one phrase that comes up constantly in any of these shows that you watch. And if you watch them, you'll probably recognize it as soon as I say it, because our culture and our world, we like this idea of hospitality. And people oftentimes, as they're looking at houses, they'll say this over and over again, no matter what the couple's like. They'll say this: hey, we need a space for entertaining. Oh, that'll be great for entertaining. Oh, we love to have people over, so we need a backyard for entertaining, or we need a kitchen for entertaining. We need to have a space to be hospitable to people, is essentially what they are saying as they're communicating that. And so I think deep within us, each one of us knows that there's something good about welcoming people into our homes, or our apartments, or the places that we find ourselves. There's something good about being hospitable, but what does it look like to practice hospitality in a way that's centered in the gospel? That's what we're going to look at together today. And in fact, this is the big idea, that biblical hospitality, it puts our lives and our hearts on display. Think about that for just a minute. Biblical hospitality, when we truly practice it the way that the Bible teaches us, it puts our lives and it puts our hearts on display. And this is something that can be extremely exciting and wonderful to engage in, and it can also be extremely challenging as well. Because when we actually practice hospitality the way that the Bible tells us to, our lives are on display to the people that we welcome into our homes and into our lives. And sometimes we have things that we love to show off to other people. And sometimes when we put our lives on display, people see the real us. And there can be some hard things about that as well. Our hearts are on display. When we welcome people into our lives, when we welcome people into our home, when we practice hospitality, people see what we truly value, don't they? I mean, just as simple as walking into somebody's house, you're going to see pictures on their wall, and you're going to see, usually the pictures that we hang on our wall show you what we actually value. They're going to see the way that you lay out your home. And it actually is kind of an indication of what our hearts and what our lives truly worship and truly bow down to. And so as we look at this passage today about hospitality, I hope that it's encouraging to you and inspiring and makes you think about what would it look like for me to engage more in practicing hospitality to one another. And I also hope that it's maybe even a little bit challenging for all of us. And we ask this question: when my life is truly on display, when the deep longings of my heart are really out there for people to see and I invite them into it, what are those things that I truly value? What are those things that truly make an impact in my life? So we're going to be in the book of 1 Peter. 1 Peter is written by the Apostle Peter, and he's writing this letter to churches that are scattered around the Roman Empire. Many of them are facing persecution, and so Peter is talking to the church, and he's telling them about the importance of practicing hospitality, because oftentimes people are having to move around the Roman Empire to avoid persecution. And he's saying, listen, welcome people into your home, because that's part of us being the church to one another. And so in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7, we're going to stop a couple different times and we're going to break this passage down. But starting in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7, it says this. It says, the end of all things is near. Peter says that to this church, this group of churches that he's writing to. The passage I taught on just a couple weeks ago talked about the reality that the return of Christ was near, and we talked about how we probably all need to pay attention to that. So Peter says the end of all things is near, and then he says, therefore be alert and of sober mind, so that you may pray. Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers a multitude of sins. I want to stop right there, and I want to just pull out our first point from this. It's this: a clear mind is a mark of maturity. A clear mind is a mark of maturity, because Peter says this phrase. He says, be sober-minded. And essentially what that means is keep your mind steady, keep your mind clear. And perhaps we would say it like this, be cool, be calm, be under control no matter what the situation comes into your life. And it's this warning that Peter was giving this early church about all these crazy doctrines that were being projected onto the church, these crazy teachings, almost like these conspiracy theories that were out there that were continued to be to kind of be peddled into the church. And Peter says, listen, I know that the end of all things is near, but all the more, because Jesus is going to return before too long, we don't need to dive into everything that we hear and be frantic. We actually need to calm ourselves and have clear minds. You see, a mark of maturity is a clear mind. The opposite of a clear mind is like a frenzied mind. Somebody who just hears something and they let their mind just kind of spiral and continue to go where it probably shouldn't go. And let's be honest, we see a lot of that in our world today, don't we? As we talk about this all the time, but we have to, because it is so prevalent as you look at the world, as you look at social media. There is this continued presence of not a sober mind, not a clear mind, but this frenzied mentality. That everything is so terrible. And how could this person do this? And how could this leader do this? And they're coming for you, and you better look out, right? we have these frenzied mentalities that are continuing to be peddled in our world 2,000 years later, even after Peter was telling the church this. And so I think he would say the same thing to us that he's saying to this early church. Listen, the end is near, and we don't know how near it is, but every day that passes, we're getting closer to the end, right? That's just the way that it works. The end is near. Therefore, don't dive into more and more crazy thinking, but be sober-minded. I was reading this article this week by a guy by the name of Ed Stetzer. Maybe some of you know who he is. He's a Christian kind of sociologist, and he studies a lot of facts and trends within Christianity. And he was kind of calling out the church in this article, and he was saying statistically, Christians and people who go to church are more likely to believe conspiracy theories that are clearly not true than other groups of people. And he had all the different numbers and the reasons why he was backing this reality. That Christians sometimes are the worst at hitting share on these, crazy stories that actually aren't true at all. And he said, isn't that sad? Because we're called to be the opposite. We're called to be clear-minded. We're not called to jump in to everything that we see. We're supposed to think things through and have clear minds. You see, what Peter's saying is, if we are convinced that Jesus is coming, then we need to live in a way that's prepared for that. And here's the reality, and this is kind of a heavy reality, but it is a truth that we have to sit in and we have to know more and more. One way or another, all of us are going to meet Jesus. That song that we just sang, one way or another, we are all going to stand before the Lord, right? That is the truth. Whether our death comes first or whether the return of Jesus comes first, we don't know. Only God knows. But one way or another, we are all going to stand before him. And so the question is, are we living in a way that is honoring to God? Are we living in a way that wrestles with that reality that the eternal truth of God is coming for each and every one of us? And so, therefore, we must love. Therefore, we must love. So Peter's response is, listen, this whole thing's ending one way or another, and we need to make sure that we love each other deeply. You see, Christian love isn't just an emotion. It's not just a feeling. Christian love is something that we work at, that we strive for, that we engage with. And he's going to talk about what that looks like as we read on in this passage. So let's just jump down at verse 9. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 9. I'm just going to read this one verse. Here's the phrase that this whole sermon is based on. He says, offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. And our second point is this, that hospitality, it's a natural response to the gospel. Being hospitable to the people that we know and others that we don't even know, it is a natural response to the gospel. It is what being the church actually means, is welcoming people into our lives. You see, hospitality, it happens inside church buildings. Like we're here right now, we actually have a First Impressions team, a group of people that greets people, and it looks a lot different during these times. Right now we hand out masks, rather than bulletins or whatever the case may be. There's a group of people that welcome you as you walk into this space, but hospitality, true hospitality, it doesn't just start at the church's, the building's front door. True hospitality, as we're being the church, it starts in our hearts. It starts in the hearts of the people who are committed to God, the people that are committed to consistently reaching out to their neighbors and friends and family. It starts in the people that are welcoming other followers of Christ into their lives. See, the best examples of hospitality actually don't even happen in our building. They happen in our homes, in our world, and the places that God brings us into contact with other people. That's what it means to be the church. We might have shared this with you before, but every other year, many of our staff and our pastors, we go out to San Francisco for a conference. There's a group of us that focus on planting churches in college towns, and there is this church in UC Berkeley, which is kind of a crazy place. You may not know this, but UC Berkeley, one of the most hostile campuses to Christianity, there's a church of about 1,000 college students. It's been there for a number of years. It's amazing when we get to go out there, and this is a primarily Korean church, and they host host this conference every other year, and we have this connection with them. And I thought I knew what hospitality was until I went out there. Because when we go out there, there's 200 or 300 people that are at these conferences, and they will not let you stay in a hotel. They host you in their home. They're like, no, you can't stay in a hotel. You have to come and stay with us. So they divide up all the people at the conference, and they go to the different homes. And when you go to the homes of one of these people, they literally treat you like royalty. It's crazy. And as you talk to them, you get to know them a little bit more. And what you find out is it's not just something that they do for the conference. It's a lifestyle that they're constantly living out. One time I was out there and I had a cold. And you know how it is with a man with a cold. Like I thought I was on my deathbed, as I was out there. And I just mentioned something to the host family. When I was there, I said, yeah, I'm not feeling that great. And I came back after the conference that night, and they had like this big, basket of just supplies and little snacks and a note. I hope you're feeling better, Pastor Brian, and NyQuil. And they just like treated me like so kindly and so hospitable. It was just crazy to see. And every time I'm around people that just truly live out hospitality, I'm inspired myself to live more and more in the ways of Jesus as we welcome people into our lives. I was thinking about this, and one of the things that they said that really stuck with me, that we've tried to model, Sarah and I, even in our life, is they say, we don't always clean up our houses and make them perfect when we invite people over. We want to invite people into the real parts of our lives. So yes, they cater to people and they love people, but you would walk in and sometimes they would be standing there doing dishes, and you're welcome to jump in and help them do dishes. You're part of their family. You're getting to see the good. You're getting to see the hard. You're getting to see what it looks like to live a life on mission. And so Sarah and I, we've even tried to do that. If we invite you over to our house, you might just be doing dishes with us. I don't know. Hospitality doesn't mean that we put on a show and act different. It means that we're real. And we show our hearts and our lives to the people that we're welcoming into it. And so I just want to talk just for a minute about our world that we're living in right now and what it might look like to be hospitable. As our teaching team talks, sometimes as we're planning out sermons, we're like, wouldn't it be awesome if we could have a sermon that didn't reference COVID? And we're like, yes, it would be awesome. However, it's almost impossible right now, right? Because when you open up the pages of Scripture, you have to apply it to the world that you're living in. And it is a massive part of our world. So how do you teach on hospitality right now when we're living in a pandemic? Well, I think we need to say hospitality may adjust a little bit during this season that we're in right now, right? That's what makes sense. So we have to talk about what does it look like to practice hospitality even in a COVID world, because for some of us, we may not be inviting people into our homes as much. We may not be even around people quite as much, but it doesn't mean that we stop practicing hospitality, because it's what the Bible teaches us to do. So here's a couple ideas for you. Even as you might be joining us online, or if you're here, here's a couple ideas of what it could look like to practice hospitality in our world that we're living in right now. First, maybe you go on a walk in your neighborhood or wherever you find yourself living, and you intentionally try to connect with people when you're outside. You don't just walk like with your head down, but you actually are looking for ways to connect with people and talk with people. And even if you don't get a chance to connect with people, maybe you just pray for them. Maybe just pray for houses as you're passing by. Or you pray for a couple that you see that's walking down the street. You say, I don't know where they are, Lord, but I just pray for their marriage. I pray that they're connected to a community. You go out with the intention of connecting with people and praying for others. Maybe you don't make your neighbors a meal as much anymore, but maybe you buy them a meal. Have you ever had somebody do that for you? Man, we've had people do that for us every once in a while, just totally surprise us with buying us carry-out or something. It feels so awesome and so amazing. Maybe God would call you to do that if you're in the position financially. It's a way you could practice hospitality. Maybe you're able to help with somebody's kids. This new school year that comes up, and I know that there's lots of factors that we have to think about. Some of us may not be in a position, but some of us might be. It's going to be a totally different world, and so maybe you open up your home in different ways, or open up your yard or your space outside and welcome kids in when they need and when they might be at home alone a lot, and you're able to find ways to welcome people. Maybe just write an encouraging note or card or a Bible verse to somebody, and you slip it in their mailbox, or you leave it on their doorstep. Maybe you offer some of the resources or specialties that you have Maybe you're an educator, and so you can help teach a kid, or maybe you know something about business, or maybe you know something about cars, or whatever the case may be. Maybe you just offer the expertise that you have to the people in your lives, whether it's the people in our church or whether it's the people that you live in connection to. Or maybe you just share your stuff. Maybe you just say, you know what, the stuff that I have, it's not just mine. If you live around me, if you know me, if we're connected, I want you to know that you can have access to my stuff. You know, our neighbors who go here to H2O, when the whole pandemic thing hit, we were kind of caught off guard. We didn't have any hand sanitizer, and you couldn't buy it in stores. And so our neighbors brought us over 2 bottles of hand sanitizer, and that was like gold. We were like, wow, this is amazing. I can't believe that you did this for us. But they had some, and they shared it with us. And man, that was such a small blessing, but such a huge blessing in our life. So we don't stop practicing hospitality just because of the world that we live in. We look for new and creative ways. And in fact, it probably will make us stand out more to the world around us. Let's close up with this. 1 Peter chapter 5, Peter kind of goes in more in depth as to what it looks like to view our lives through this mindset. In verse 10, he says, each of you, right after he gets done talking about practicing hospitality without grumbling, he says, each of you should use whatever gifts you've received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. If anyone speaks, they should do so as one who speaks the very words of God. If anyone serves, they should do so with the strength God provides, so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus Christ. To him be the glory and the power forever and ever. Amen. Third is this: all we have is God's. All we have is God's. And when we actually focus on being the church, that mindset shift transforms the way that we live. Do you truly believe that? Because it's a conviction that you have to develop if we want to be the church, not just go to church. It's a conviction that we have to develop deep in our core, that everything we have is not ours. We're stewards of it. We're gifted with it. We get to take care of it for a little while, but it's certainly not ours. This goes for our stuff, and this goes for the gifts that God's given us, the intangible things, the ways that he's made us. It's not even ours as well. You know, nothing is ours. It's a mindset that we have to wrap our minds around. We talk about this in our house a lot. And it helps with our kids a lot, too, because, you know, as our kids are getting older, sometimes, you know, maybe they'll be, you know, arguing with each other a little bit or something like that. And one of them will say, get out of my room. You know, I want you out of my room. Or that's my bike. Or that's my fill in the blank. And so one of the things that we're constantly trying to talk about for all of us is that really yours? Wait, you said it's your room, right? It's not your room. That's God's room that you get to live in right now. Isn't that cool? And so how would God want you to use it? That's God's bike. I mean, that's actually his. And you get to use it for a little while right now. Okay, that's great. Well, how would he want you to use it? And so we say that with our kids. But I wonder, as some of us grow and mature, are we still able to embrace that mindset? As the place that you live, have you developed a conviction that it is not yours? It truly isn't. You're living there right now. You may even pay the mortgage, but even the money that you pay the mortgage with, it's God's. And he's allowing you to stay. Is the vehicle that you drive, have you developed the conviction that it's not yours? It's been gifted to you on loan by God. And so what does it look like to be hospitable with that? We looked at your gifts, the way that God's made you, the things that you're good at, because you're good at some things. I know you are. God has made each and every one of us in a unique way, and you have specific things about your personality, and you have specific gifts and passions that he has given you, and that's a beautiful thing. What does it look like to live in a hospitable way and to use those to serve and love and invite others into his family? See, our stuff, our money, our gifts, everything we have is his. And when we live out of the hospitality that Jesus set the example for us to live by, then we start to realize that we get to give it away, and in return, we receive the blessings of seeing how God uses that. See, the gospel, it's our reality that allows us to live in hospitable ways. As we look to Jesus, how sacrificial was he? Someone who left heaven and said, my very life, my very being is not my own. And so I'm going to leave heaven and come to earth and walk on earth. Something that I don't have to do, but something that I'm choosing to sacrificially do for these people that I love. And when Jesus left heaven coming to earth, he knew that he would die on a cross. Now, he didn't even think his life was his own. And so he came, he lived a perfect life. He loved, sacrificed, and served with everything that he had. And for that life, he was crucified, sent to the cross, tortured, and killed on his own will. And as he died on the cross, he was buried in the grave. He rose 3 days later, defeating death, proving that he, in fact, is God. So he laid down his life for us. He gave us this model that each and every one of us gets to live by, where we invite people to see our lives. Jesus lived life with people. He shared everything he had, and he knew it wasn't his own. So as we look to our Savior, Jesus, as we look to the gospel, as we look to this reality that Jesus defeated sin and death, and when we put our faith and trust in him, then we get invited into his family, into his kingdom. It inspires us. It encourages us to ask the question, what does it look like for me to live like him? And one of the primary applications of the gospel is that we would live lives of hospitality, open hands with everything God has blessed us with, so that the world might know him more, and we might bless the people that he brings into our life. You know, Jesus, as we look to the way that he lived his life, he oftentimes would eat with people. He would gather with people. He would invite them to his table and say, I want you to be part of what God has blessed me with. I want you to be part of this family. And we want you to know that Jesus wants that for each and every one of us. Those of us who are here, those of us who are joining online, we are invited in to his home, so to speak, to his table, so to speak, to worship him and to know him and to live in a relationship with him. That inspires us to live like that towards others. So let's pray, and then let's spend some time worshiping and singing together. God, we thank you for the power of the gospel. As we think about the beauty of your son leaving heaven, coming to earth, living a perfect life, laying down his own life, sacrificing even that, not viewing his life as his own, but viewing it as something that he would use to honor and glorify you and reunite us with you. God, we're humbled. We're humbled that we get to partake in that beautiful gift of offering us salvation, to know you, to love you, to commune with you. Father, we thank you and praise you for how good and kind you are to us, where we live lives that honor you, where we live lives of open hands that love and invite others into your family. God, we thank you and we praise you. Amen. Now, as we're here talking about the gospel and all that Jesus has done to us, one of the things that we do as a reminder of the gospel is we take communion together. And so if you came in and you didn't get a chance to grab communion, there'll be some in the back. You can go anytime during these next two songs, grab that prepackaged communion, bring it back to your seat and take it during these last two songs. If you're at home and you want to take communion with the people that you're with or by yourself, feel free to grab some bread and juice and partake, because communion is a reminder of the extent that Jesus went to invite us into his family. And so when we take the bread, it's a reminder of Jesus' body that was broken for us, and we take the juice, a reminder of Jesus' blood that was shed for us all so that we could be united with him. So during these last couple songs, if you're a follower of Christ, we invite you to take communion and be reminded of his deep love for us. Let's stand and let's worship.
Table, all who are hungry, come and feast. Those who are weary, those who are needy, come receive. Come to the taste and see. I'll sing that all again. Come to the water, all who are thirsty. Come and drink. Come to the table, all who are hungry. Come and feast. Those who are weary, those who are needy, come receive. Come to the river, come to the river. Taste and see. Come to the river, come to the river, come to the river. Taste and see, oh my soul, and oh my soul, thirst for you and you alone. Oh my soul, thirst for you and you alone. And my soul, thirst for you and you alone. My soul, thirst for you and you alone. I will taste and I will taste and see that you are good. Sing it to him. I will taste and see that you are good. I will taste and see that you are good. You're good to me. Oh, and I will taste and see that you are good. Oh, and I will taste and see that you are good. I will taste and see that you are good. You're good to me. Oh God, thank you for the opportunity to worship you this morning. As we just listen to the message that you gave to Brian this morning, that we would just be encouraged to love one another, to be hospitable, and that can look like so many things. Right now, that can look like so many things that just give us the words, give us the ways in which you want us to reach out to people. Lord, as we're just walking down the street, just that we would pray for the people that we see. We just have no idea what each and every person is going through. We would just ask that you continue to soften our hearts so that we can learn to love those people even more. We ask this in your name. Amen.
All right, everybody, this is our last song, and I think it's a church favorite. It's Be Thou My Vision. So let's just sing it out together. You can clap. King of heaven, thy treasure thou art. Oh, 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 come on, high King of heaven, my victory won. May I reach heaven's door, oh, bright heaven's side. Whatever befall, still be the vision, oh, ruler of all. Sing,
Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Our hearts for you is that as you go out this week, that you would be able to glorify God in all the creative ways that you show hospitality. We're really excited to see you next week at Carter Park. Have a great week.